My mother looked me dead in the eye over the rim of her champagne flute and whispered, "Don't ruin your sister's big day, Abby. You work from home anyway. You can just buy yourself a new one." That was the exact moment 27 years of being the family's obedient, silent ATM officially expired. It started small, the way financial abuse usually does. A Netflix subscription here, a water bill there. "You're living under our roof, Abby. It's only fair you pitch in." I was 22 at the time, fresh out of college with a degree in software engineering and a remote job that paid more than both of my parents' salaries combined. Pitching in felt right. It felt like the responsible, adult thing to do, but pitching in is a notoriously slippery slope. By the time I turned 25, I wasn't just pitching in. I was the concrete foundation holding the entire household up. I paid the Verizon family plan for 4 lines. I paid the gigabit internet bill so my father could stream his shows without buffering. I paid the premium cable package, the streaming bundle, the grocery bills, and the Geco auto insurance policy. Most damning of all, I paid the car loans. One was for my mother's Tahoe, a gas-guzzling behemoth they couldn't actually afford. The other was for my own car, a dark metallic gray Audi A5. It was my single indulgence. I worked 60-hour weeks, staring at lines of code until my vision blurred, just to afford the privilege of keeping my family afloat. Sadie, on the other hand, was an aspiring lifestyle influencer, majoring in communications at a local college. She was 21, stunningly pretty, and entirely useless. Her job in the family ecosystem was to exist, look aesthetic, and complain. While I was analyzing data architecture in my bedroom office, she was filming morning routines in the kitchen I had stocked with groceries. The cracks in my patience started turning into full-blown fractures about 2 months before Sadie's 21st birthday. I was sitting at the kitchen island, deep in a complex coding sprint, when my father walked in and tossed a thick envelope directly onto my laptop keyboard. "Rates went up, Abs," he said, walking to the fridge to grab a beer. "You need to call them." I stared at the Geco logo. "I need to call them? Dad, it's your car and my car. Why don't you call?" "Because you're the one with the credit score, sweetheart," he said, popping the tab on his drink. "Besides, Sadie got a speeding ticket last month. It bumped the premium up. Just cover the difference, yeah?" I rubbed my temples. Sadie doesn't even have a car. She drives the Tahoe. Why am I paying for her speeding ticket? "Because she's just a kid," he said, his tone dripping with that familiar, dismissive condescension. "She's doing an unpaid internship. You make the big bucks. Don't be stingy." A week later, the tension escalated. Sadie marched into the living room, dramatically throwing her phone onto the couch. "My battery is literally dying at like 30%. It's a piece of junk." My mother didn't even look up from her iPad. "Abby, the family plan is in your name. Just upgrade her line to the new iPhone 14 Pro. It's only like $30 a month on the installment plan." "Plus the down payment, Mom," I said, keeping my eyes on my screen. "And I'm already paying for 4 lines. I'm not buying her a $1,000 phone." Sadie rolled her eyes, crossing her arms over her chest. "God, Abby, you're so cheap. You literally sit in your pajamas all day typing on a screen. It's not like you have a social life to spend your money on. You just hoard it." "I hoard it so the electricity stays on, Sadie." "Girls, please," my mother sighed, the deep, theatrical sigh of a martyr who had endured too much. "We do so much for you, Abby. We let you live here. We give you a home. Just get your sister the phone. It's her birthday month." I bought the phone. I always folded. I had been conditioned my entire life to believe that keeping the peace was more important than keeping my boundaries. But the final red flag, the one I stupidly ignored, happened in the driveway a week before the party. I was washing my Audi. I love that car. It was the only tangible proof of my hard work. My father wandered out, leaning against the hood of the Tahoe, watching me polish the windshield. "You know, you barely drive that thing anymore since your office went remote," he remarked, kicking a tire. "Sits in the driveway collecting dust." "I drive it on weekends, Dad. I like it. Just seems like a waste of premium leather sitting in the sun," he mused, looking the car up and down. "Sadie's taking that internship downtown next semester. She needs something reliable, something safe, something that looks professional, you know." I froze, the soapy sponge dripping onto my sneakers. "She can drive the Tahoe." "It's too big for her to park in the city, Abs. Come on, think of your sister." I brushed it off. I thought it was just idle dad talk. I didn't realize it was a strategy. I didn't realize they had already made a decision about my property. Then came the birthday party. It was a lavish backyard affair. I had paid for the fairy lights strung through the oak trees. I had paid half the catering bill because my mother claimed her credit card was acting weird. Sadie was wearing a sequin dress that cost more than my first laptop, holding court among her college friends. The music was loud, the champagne was flowing, and for a brief moment, I actually felt happy for her. Then, my father tapped his fork against his glass. The music faded. The crowd of about 50 people gathered around the patio. "To our beautiful Sadie," my father began, his face flushed with alcohol and pride. "You're stepping into adulthood today. You're brilliant, you're driven, and you're going to take the world by storm. But to do that, you need a ride that matches your bright future." He reached into his blazer pocket. He pulled out a key fob. My eyes locked onto it. It had a small braided silver tassel hanging from the ring. I had bought that tassel in Florence 3 years ago. My stomach dropped into my shoes. A cold, ringing silence filled my ears. "Happy 21st, baby girl," he grinned, tossing the keys through the air. Sadie caught them, letting out an ear-piercing shriek. "Oh my God! Thank you, Daddy!" She sprinted toward the side gate, her friends trailing behind her like a pack of manic hyenas. The crowd parted, following her out to the driveway. I moved like a sleepwalker, drifting behind them. There it was. My dark gray Audi A5, gleaming under the streetlights, a massive, obnoxious red velvet bow slapped onto the hood. Sadie was jumping up and down, hugging my father, taking selfies in front of the grill. The guests clapped and cheered, looking at my parents with absolute admiration for such a generous, extravagant gift. I looked at my father. He caught my eye for a fraction of a second, then immediately looked away, taking a long sip of his drink. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked calmly over to my mother, gripped her elbow tight enough to make her flinch, and steered her away from the crowd, pulling her into the kitchen. The heavy oak door swung shut, cutting off the cheers. "What the hell is that?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. Mom smoothed her blouse, her face instantly morphing into a mask of irritated condescension. "Keep your voice down, Abby. People will hear you." "That is my car. The title is in my name. The loan is in my name. I pay the insurance." She rolled her eyes, crossing her arms. "Oh, grow up, Abby. You work from home. You literally sit in your sweatpants all day. You don't even need a car. Sadie needs to commute to campus. She needs to go on dates. She has a life. So she gets my car? The one I pay for?" "Don't be dramatic," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "We'll take over the payments." It was a blatant lie. They were drowning in credit card debt. They couldn't even afford the catering for this party. "Don't ruin your sister's big day, Abby," she continued, her eyes hardening. "You're an adult. You make good money. Just buy yourself a new one. Be a good sister for once." For once. That was the phrase that did it. The absolute, unadulterated audacity of it. I looked at her. Really looked at her. I saw the blowout I had funded. I saw the kitchen island I had paid to renovate. I saw a woman who viewed me not as a daughter, but as a utility. And in that exact moment, the tether snapped. The invisible chain of guilt, obligation, and familial duty just dissolved into ash. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt surgical. I smiled. A terrifying, dead-eyed smile. "You're right, Mom. Happy birthday, Sadie." I turned and walked upstairs to my room. I locked the door. I pulled my suitcase from the closet. I had been secretly eyeing a loft apartment in Denver for 6 months, dreaming of moving away, but always finding an excuse to stay and help. I opened my laptop, found the tab, and clicked sign lease. I wired the security deposit and first month's rent. Then I packed. My passport, my birth certificate, my jewelry, my electronics, and a week's worth of clothes. The next morning, the house was dead quiet. Sadie and 3 of her clones were hungover but ecstatic. They were driving down to Miami for a week-long birthday bender. I stood at my bedroom window sipping my coffee, watching them load their knockoff designer weekenders into the trunk of my Audi. Sadie slid into the driver's seat, blasted the stereo, and pulled out of the driveway. I waited exactly 2 hours. Then I opened the Audi app on my phone. GPS tracking, active. Heading south on I-95. I opened a new tab on my browser and booked a one-way ticket on a budget airline to Miami. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out my spare key fob. I called an Uber to the airport. It was 2 a.m. when my taxi pulled up to the glittering, neon-lit entrance of the South Beach Resort. The Florida humidity hit me like a wet towel, but I felt nothing but ice in my veins. I bypassed the lobby and walked straight into the guest parking garage. I pulled out my phone. The app showed the car on level 3, section B. I took the concrete stairs. My boots echoed in the empty structure. And there it was. My beautiful, stolen Audi. I pressed the unlock button on my fob. The headlights flashed, a silent greeting from an old friend. I opened the door. The interior reeked of cheap tequila, vape smoke, and vanilla perfume. Empty White Claw cans littered the passenger floorboard. A neon pink feather boa was draped over the rearview mirror. I threw the boa into the nearest trash can, started the engine, and backed out of the space. I didn't drive back home. I drove north, toward Denver, toward my actual life. Somewhere in the Florida Panhandle, as the sun began to bleed over the horizon in streaks of violent orange, I pulled into a Waffle House. I ordered a black coffee, opened my laptop, and connected to my mobile hotspot. It was time for the final act. First, Verizon. I logged into the family account. 4 lines. I selected my father's, my mother's, and Sadie's numbers. Action: suspend service. Reason: lost/stolen device. Because the installment plans for their $1,000 iPhones were in my name, and I had no intention of paying them off, the carrier immediately blacklisted the IMEIs. Their phones weren't just disconnected, they were bricked. They were now effectively expensive glass paperweights. No 5G, no Wi-Fi calling, no GPS, no possibility of inserting a new SIM card. Dead. Second, Comcast. Action: cancel service. Effective immediately. Let my father enjoy the silence of a house with no cable and no internet. Third, Geico. I logged in, removed their Tahoe from my policy, and canceled the entire account. I bought a new, single-driver policy for myself. I closed the laptop, drank my coffee, and smiled at the waitress. The pancakes tasted like absolute freedom. The fallout was biblical. I bought a cheap burner phone at a gas station 2 days later just to check my email. My inbox was a war zone. There were dozens of emails from my father, sent from his office computer. Abby, what the hell did you do to the Wi-Fi? Our phones aren't working. Call the house immediately. This isn't funny. You are acting like a child. And then, the emails from Sadie, sent via the hotel's business center, frantic and riddled with typos. Abby, my car was stolen. Someone took it right out of the hotel garage. My phone is broken. Mom and Dad aren't answering. I don't know what to do. Call the hotel lobby, please. I didn't reply. I just kept driving. I found out the rest of the story a week later from my aunt, who couldn't wait to call me and spill the tea. Sadie, in a hysterical, hungover panic, had called the Miami police from the hotel concierge desk to report a grand theft auto. 2 officers showed up. They asked for her license and the vehicle's registration. Sadie sobbed, telling them the car was a birthday gift from her daddy. The officers ran the plates. According to my aunt, the cop looked at Sadie, looked at his notepad, and sighed heavily. Ma'am, this vehicle is registered to an Abigail. Are you Abigail? No, she's my sister. But it's my car now. My dad gave it to me. The cops literally laughed in her face. They explained very slowly that if the registered owner comes and retrieves their own vehicle, it is not a crime. It is simply someone picking up their property. They warned her that filing a false police report was a felony and suggested she find another way home. Sadie and her friends had to pool their remaining cash to buy Greyhound bus tickets back. A 20-hour ride next to a broken toilet. It's been 8 months since I left. I live in a high-rise in Denver with floor-to-ceiling windows. The Wi-Fi is fast, the fridge is full, and my bank account has never looked healthier. I blocked my parents' emails after my father threatened to sue me for emotional distress. A threat that died the second a lawyer told him he had absolutely no case, and that he was actually lucky I wasn't suing him for unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. Yesterday, I got an email from a new address. It was Sadie. It wasn't angry. It was long, desperate, and pathetic. Abby, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Mom and Dad are making me pay rent now. They can't afford the mortgage without you. Dad had to sell the Tahoe because he couldn't afford the insurance you used to pay. They scream at each other every night. I had to drop out of my internship to work at a diner to pay for a broken used Honda. I get it now. I get what you did for us. I get what my luxury cost you. Please, can we just talk? I miss my sister. I read the email twice. I felt a brief, fleeting pang of pity for the girl who thought the world was handed to her on a silver platter, only to realize I was the one polishing the silver all along. I moved my cursor over the message. I clicked delete. Then, I grabbed my keys, and went for a drive.